This is the Authentic Dating series brought to you by Ahmad and David,
where we explore what it takes to have a dating life you're excited about.
Hey guys, I'm David.
I'm Ahmad.
And this is the Authentic Dating series. So we've got a really awesome episode. I know you say that a lot, but it's truly because we believe that and the episodes are awesome, right? And this one is an issue that I think we all kind of face at some point in our lives, men and women, right? When it comes down to it, you know, when it comes to sexual performance, we all have some anxiety, some hang up, some worry, some concern. The standard stuff for men is around size, and for standard stuff for women is a kind of around body. But there's also like much deeper levels to that, and we really get in this episode with Sarah from Hanx, who is actually Dr Sarah Welsh. So she's a doctor, and she shows her doctor skills quite a few times where she corrects me when I'm wrong. And we get into what performance anxiety is, like how it happens, and probably most importantly, right, is like how you can overcome your performance anxiety.
Yeah, it's a really nice episode, and what I love about it is we draw a distinction, between physical and the psychological, and I think so often people can get confused, especially in men. They muddle up the differences between what it is to have a physical problem and what it is to actually have a psychological performance problem. And I particularly love this was just being able to, as David said, speak to a psychologist about the issues that men and women face, and also the differences in what men and women face during sex. And I think it's very important to understand that both men and women suffer from performance anxiety, because so often we just focus on ourselves as men, and we're trying to focus on better performance. So yeah, you're going to hear me be very curious and engaged in this episode as I essentially prod Sarah for more answers about some of the things that I've come across in my experience and sharing that. So yeah, it was really cool. The other thing that we want to share with you right now as well is we've really been posting more on our own personal blog, sharing more in-depth insights into dating. We started off talking a lot about the fear of rejection. And David, what was the last one you just did?
I've just written something about 9 ways to basically increase your confidence, even while we're in this kind of semi-pandemic. I feel like it's existing now. Just actionable ways as guys and as girls you can basically build your confidence, because we've seen that one of the biggest reasons people are struggling in their dating, and probably one of the biggest reasons you're struggling in dating and maybe in your sexual performance, is a level of confidence. And confidence isn't one of those things that you're just God-given. Confidence is built by actions that you can take daily, weekly, monthly. So in that blog post, I talk about things you can do daily and do weekly to build your confidence in yourself and who you are.
And just to run you guys over some of the other ones we've done, I wrote one about being driven by fear and the importance of noticing where our actions come from, and that's more from a psychological point of view of how we take action. Dave, you wrote another great one about being kinder to ourselves and others in dating, and I've got another one about the importance of vulnerability in your communication and expression, especially in dating. So yeah, you can head over to our website, authenticdatingseries.com, and you'll find all of these articles there on our blog. And in addition to that, if you haven't already signed up to our newsletter, you really should, because every month we're releasing a newsletter with more questions answered from our listeners and our readers. We take questions and we go through them, we answer them, and we round up the month's news on the podcast and hit you with any latest details of things that we're up to. So yeah, you can also sign up to our newsletter on our website, which is www.authenticdatingseries.com.
Yeah. And I guess also is a shout out for coaching. Like, I think it's something that we're doing, and it's we're seeing remarkable results actually with the people we are coaching. So if it's something you'd be interested, just like hit us up at email address at hello@authenticdatingseries.com, or come and find us on Instagram, which is Authentic Dating Series. That's it on Instagram. So yeah, just like, questions or inquiries around coaching, because we offer an hour free session to just get to know you and find out what's going on for you and add some value to you.
Awesome. That's us. We're awesome. We're just out there putting out all this awesome content and just trying to help you create better relationships, deeper connections.
Yeah. So I think that's it, actually. And as we do say now, without further ado,
let's get into the episode. Welcome, Sarah, to the show. Very excited to have you with us here today. We've got a great show planned, and I know that David especially has put a lot of thought into this, but he's had me do the intro anyway. So we've got a great show planned. I'm really eager to get stuck in because I know with your expertise and everything that you do, like I'm really actually keen to find out what is going on the women's side of things when it comes to performance anxiety. And just to preface that is this, what we're going to talk about today is performance anxiety from the male perspective and from the female perspective. But there's a nice car going past here. So to begin with, could you just tell us a bit about yourself for anyone who hasn't heard of Sarah?
Yeah, of course. Well, look, thanks for having me, guys. It's great to be here. My name's Sarah. I am co-founder of Hanx, which is a sexual wellness brand. We would signed with women in mind in particular, but very inclusive for all genders. We sell condoms and lubricant. We launched a couple of years ago. My co-founder and I, Farah and I, decided that there was no brand out there that we felt comfortable buying condoms from, that we felt empowered, that we knew what ingredients were going inside them, that fitted in with our beauty cues. So we launched Hanx back in 2017 to really tackle that and kind of the taboos around sexual wellness, especially for women. And my background's in medicine, so I worked as a gynecology doctor and kind of worked in sexual health as well. So really, saw the rise of difficult to treat sexually transmitted infections and women coming off hormones as well. So this kind of real gap for products like Hanx to fill, and it shouldn't be something we are embarrassed about, but condoms are definitely something that have carried a negative connotation, I think, for men and women and everyone really. So the brands out there weren't something that appealed to us. So that's kind of us in a nutshell. We have a forum, we have lots of content as well, so we want to really open that conversation and be honest and real about sex and women's health.
That's incredible. And actually, how have you found the response to all of that? Because it feels like such a new undertaking and in such a male dominated environment. What's the response been?
Yeah, definitely. And you're right, it is very male dominated environment, and there's some big players in that market as well. So it's been tough in lots of sense. It's changing behaviors, and that is a huge hurdle. But I think it's really exciting when we get kind of response from our customers saying, there hasn't been anything like this until now. I now feel comfortable. I now, can protect myself from infections, or, I came off hormones and there was nothing until now that I can really use. Because as well, our condoms don't use any nasty chemicals, such as anesthetics, spermicide, that can be fine for some people, but they can also be very irritable for others. And I was seeing women in particular who were coming into clinics with recurrent thrush or irritation because of products they were using, such as ingredients in their lubricants or condoms. And so we're transparent about our ingredients, and I think that's also a really important part of our product range, because we're kind to bodies as much as possible. So the response has been really good, and it's really exciting to see the business grow and have people come back and say, we're doing what we set out to do.
I think that's really cool, actually. And just for everyone listening, I have actually tried a Hanx condom, and it feels great. So yeah, for the men, on the other side, there's nothing to worry about. They feel fantastic.
And that when we built the product, we were like, okay, what are the things that we need from the product? It needs to be, it's a medical device at the end of the day. It needs to be safe. It needs to be ultra thin, because we don't, the negative things that are around condoms, we want it to make as good as possible with Hanx. So the packaging, the latex itself, the we're CE certified, we're vegan certified, because other products use animal byproducts, and there's no need to put anything like that near condoms. So we're no animal byproducts. We don't have any, we use fair traded latex, so it's all kind of sustainable. We're biodegradable, all of those things. So like we kind of made sure that it was a product we wanted to use as well. So yeah, kind of the quality was like really important.
Dave, maybe you and I can, after this whole lockdown's over, we can go and visit the factory.
That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Yeah.
I've been to a condom factory.
I know they do some really fun testing, like blow it up, put water in it, like do explosions. Like it's brilliant. They have physics phase.
Wow.
So good. Yeah. Put on your lab coat and have a look around.
I'm in the wrong job, man.
Yeah.
I'm in the wrong job. I would have loved that. Playing with condoms all day.
Really fun.
Yeah. You definitely would have, Dave. I think so. I've been telling Dave. I've known David since high school, and not straight in high school, but like sometime afterwards, I always said to Dave, I was like, Dave, like if you could make a vocation out of sex, like it would definitely be your thing. So like, and I think we're actually living in this realm now where it's definitely possible to make it your vocation.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, love that.
Yeah, Dave, you could be a mascot. That would be interesting.
Yeah,
yeah. Put them through their paces, Maybe get a big giant condom costume.
Yeah, you go and like hand them out at festivals and VR condom. Yeah, condom.
We're really good. We're really good in this current climate to make a giant condom for people to wear. Keep them safe.
Yeah, it's true.
That's a PR.
That's a very good PR campaign.
Yeah, a Hanx condom just to keep you safe in Corona. I like that.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
You don't need social distancing when you got a Hanx.
Brilliant.
That is actually that's a really good idea. I like that. I want to see that. I want to see that made.
Yeah, me too. Actually, logistically.
Oh, that's funny.
So yeah. So we kind of stumbled upon the performance anxiety as a topic because I know from the conversations we've had from the men that we coach and that we know that performance anxiety, like sexual performance anxiety, is a big thing for men. And I know from women that I've been with over the years that it's also an issue for women, but it's not something that men and women often kind of talk to each other about. So there's, the men will have their performance anxiety issues and then most likely not even talk to other men about it. And women will have their concerns and their worries and maybe talk to their friends about it, but they don't often come together and sit down at the table and go, you know what, I'm really worried about this because of this. How do you feel? Like that's not a conversation that happens very much. So we thought it'd be good to, since we've got Dr. Sarah Welsh here and we have us two men, representing men, to talk about it and actually just like shed some light, because I know there's a lot that's done around, for instance, erectile dysfunction, which is something I think we'll record on later on. But, this is something that's mainly, something that's in our control mentally, we can deal with. So I thought it'd be a good episode to do. So I think one of the statistics I'm going to start with, because I'm not really one for statistics normally, actually, is something I picked up a few days ago, is that 1 in 10 men in the UK have an issue around sex, whether that be performance anxiety, erectile dysfunction, and so forth. And if that's quite a high percentage, really, and considering the very little that we actually talk about it. So yeah, I thought it'd be a good place to start.
Really interesting, and I think you're right. Like it's such it's not discussed enough, and people aren't. I don't think people are honest about it, but also people don't really want to acknowledge that potentially there's a bit of a problem there, and it's obviously a sensitive topic for everyone, and there are so many different. It's such a complex kind of issue, because it's not just this is the problem, here's a pill, let's fix it. There's so many different kind of causes, and I think a lot of them tend to be more psychological than physical, although there can be some physical conditions that can affect performance anxiety, but a bit like kind of normal anxiety, there's so many things that affect sexual performance anxiety. So stress, what are you worried about at home, in work, obviously a pandemic is another one. A lot of people are kind of asking me in this time, I should be wanting sex the whole time because I'm with my partner and we're locked down together. But actually, you know, it's maybe the last thing on your mind when you're really, really worried about your health and your family. And so there's that. And I think we have unrealistic expectations a lot of the time from popular culture and porn and you know, other things that we see and hear and talk about that isn't really real. It's just a very kind of glossy way of looking at things, and it's not reality a lot of the time. So I think that definitely impacts performance anxiety for men and women.
Yeah, there's a lot in terms of, you know, the perceived way it should be. Like one of the things, again, something else I read actually about normal performance in terms of penetrative sex actually, was that any time between 60 seconds for a normal ejaculation, like anything up to 60 seconds is regarded as normal. You know, most men, I think we grew up, you know, maybe I think I always look at our age because we were the first kind of generation to have, you know, porn that was online that you could access through your phone or online very easily, is that we've seen a lot of this kind of, you know, what I call like semi-violent porn that goes on, you know, hard hitting, the slapping and all sorts. And there's this idea that this is how we get our sex education. We watch that and we're like, this is how sex is. So, you know, we watch this and we think, as a man, you need to be able to kind of like fuck for hours, or you're not good enough. And that kind of creates the anxiety for men a lot, right? And I did even look into some of what happens is like when you do get anxious and you're feeling that, your body starts to create more stress hormones, which stop the circulation of blood, right? Which then can cause erectile issues, which then kind of it's a kind of a circular
vicious
problem,
cycle,
right? Yeah, that's the words I'm looking for, and they really wouldn't come out. And I can remember back to the first time it ever happened to me. Like I remember I was at uni and I would have been probably about 20 years old and had a girlfriend at the time. And I remember we'd been out drinking one night and went back to hers, and I was like, I can't get it up. I was like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I say to her? And I remember kind of just pretending at some point being like, I want to go to sleep. And she was like, okay, cool. And I said to my friend, one of my friends, the next day, I went to his place and I was like, I couldn't get it up. And he was like, what? I was like, I don't know what to do. What should I do? And we kind of sat there and we talked about it actually, which was quite nice. And he was like, you know, it's happened to me before. And, you know, did you drink too much? And we had really quite a mature conversation about it.
Yeah.
And I remember the way in which I dealt with it wasn't necessarily mature. I was like, okay, like every time after that, I think probably for about a week, every time I went to have sex, I was so worried about it. I felt so tense and I felt so rigid. And then it would happen again. And then every time it happens again, you feel worse about it maybe happening again. And then I think at the end, I remember getting very drunk and allowing myself to forget about it, and everything was fine. And after that, I never worried about it again for a number of years. But it's that kind of expectation that you should always be able to get hard and so forth. And it's very unrealistic.
It's so unrealistic. And I think that's such a common thing, but people don't talk about it, but also expect, you know, you wouldn't expect that in any other aspect of, or every other aspect of your life, right? You just perform on demand at every, you know, possibility. And it's not even just, it's just that, it's also, you know, our libido is not a static thing either, and that changes, and so does our partners. And actually, you know, they have to kind of line up at certain times, but it's not going to happen all the time exactly how you plan for it to. So and like you say, it then becomes more of an issue when you beat yourself up about it, and then it just perpetuates from there, unless you kind of start to kind of address either the underlying issue or kind of get over the fact that it's not going to happen as you plan every single time.
So I'm just wondering, actually, like in terms of like performance anxiety, like how would you define it then? Because I feel like there's almost like the way you introduced it, David, with erectile dysfunction. It's like one element which most of the time I would have classed like there is the sort of biological medical side of things, and then performance anxiety. Are we saying it's predominantly the emotional aspect of it. It's the psychological and emotional aspect of sex and how people feel.
From what I've read, I think it's defined as sexual performance anxiety is a feeling of nervousness or anxiety before or during and during sex.
So then it wouldn't include, like, if like you were saying earlier about, say, this woman who was like, oh, I should be wanting to have sex with my partner. Is that would you say that also falls into the same remit? Because that's not quite the same, right? That's what I was trying to
No, you're
understand.
right. No, you're right. That's more, I guess that's more libido than performance anxiety. I guess it all kind of ties in, but you're right. That's you know, it's actually when you want to have sex and but you're then worried about how you're going to perform and things that might hold you back from that side. So yeah, I think that definition that Dave said was about right.
Oh, it's interesting because I don't think I've, other than when I was like first time I was having sex and you know, very young times, or actually maybe like in the past where it was the first time I was having sex with a particular partner, that I would feel anxious. And I would, in my mind, I was like, well, this is natural in a way. It's a bit like, it's like, you know, going to, like, it's sports day. I don't know why this example came up, but like, you know, you're on the running thing and you're about to, you know, you're in front of a crowd and you gotta perform essentially, right?
Yeah.
And it's that same sort of feeling of like, oh shit, like I hope I do well. Like I hope, and that I think for me, luckily, or at least till now, whatever, like that's been the most of that. But I do also find the libido one interesting as well, because I think that's actually something that I also contend with at times. Like I find with my partner, we have different levels of desire, and the way in which it occurs to me at times is like, it's not that like I don't want to have sex. It's just like, it's just not as obvious to me. Like, it's just like, oh, you know, there's other, and I think the pandemic is an interesting one, because it's like with everything that is going on, it's like the mind is not thinking, right, I want to enjoy myself, or I want to, like, in that way. And it's almost like I want to conserve energy. I want to, just in case I'm on red alert. So it's interesting hearing that side of things. I think, I mean, I know that's not the topic of today, but I think that's another interesting.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. And I think it does tie in. Definitely. I think there is definitely that. And like we were saying before, you know, libido doesn't always match up all the time. Like, it could be weird if it did. Obviously it's great when it does, but sometimes, if it's not at the forefront of your mind, as you know, something else is clouding it, like some stress, and like you say, bit fight or flighty. You know, let's see what's going to happen.
So something, David, I think you told me this before, and maybe it was mentioned on a previous podcast, about how in relationships, like, men's sex drive tends to go down and women's sex drive tends to go up. Is that something? Is that right, or am I just making this up?
I feel like it's something, you know, for personal experience. I feel like that's really been my experience, like in relationship. I think there's this incorrect idea about men having higher sex drives. I actually read a really interesting book recently about masculinity. It's called Masked Off by J.J. Boller. And he actually talks about it, how in society we had this idea that, you know, man has to sow his seed, so his sex drive is high and it allows for promiscuous behavior and blah, blah, blah. But actually, he said there's no evidence of this. There's no evidence. And I've come to believe, and also through some of my kind of tantric learnings, is like a woman's capacity for pleasure, sexual pleasure, is much higher than a man's. You know, her orgasmic potential is initially much higher than a man's. So I've always, maybe it's, you know, I've created this experience, but my experience has often been in relation to over time, a woman's sex drive increases, and as a man, yours kind of even maybe stays the same or even wanes to a degree. I don't know what your experience, personally or professionally, is, Sarah.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, and I think I've definitely seen that kind of as a doctor in clinics as well. And I think for women, a lot of the time, it takes, in order to kind of feel safe and kind of comfortable, and it does tend to be a little bit longer for women to feel like that in a relationship, in a heterosexual relationship, to then kind of feel comfortable and maybe even communicate more about what they do want in the bedroom and what does feel good for them, and you know how often they maybe do want to have sex. Maybe that does tend to take a little bit longer to get to that stage than men. So I think there's definitely something in that. More anecdotally, than I haven't done any kind of research into it, but I think you're right. I think you're right. Like it is, you know, initially women maybe are a little bit more reserved or less likely to kind of feel comfortable with that person until they are. Then they will start feeling pleasure a lot more and enjoy it a lot more.
I think it's, you know, I think some of the age-old things about sex being more of an emotional pursuit for women is, I think they have some truths, but I think that, you know, especially in the society we live in now, there's that kind of conditioning to women that they shouldn't necessarily be full of desire and lust. So initially, even if they are lustful and full of desire, they may hold that back. Just because as a society, we kind of still to this day, there's still an element of looking badly upon women who are lustful. So I think there is definitely that point about kind of, you know, almost reserving the sex drive, you know, reserving it until they know that it is safe. Like, he's not going to judge me. He's okay with this. Like, I'm not going to judge myself as well. I think is a big part of that around the sex drive of women.
I think that comes with age probably as well, and experience. And I think there's women more and more now than ever kind of open about like owning their sexuality, and you know, female pleasure is much more of a spoken topic than it used to be. So I think that's great. So it probably is changing, but I do think that there's some, especially in kind of younger immature relationships, it tends to be takes a bit longer for women.
I mean, I was going to say, I think because definitely my experience is like as I mature, I have a deeper understanding of who I am, and then also it's like I've been using this word a lot recently. It's like unfolding. It's like you're allowing yourself to unfold and experience what is just obvious to you and what you want to experience, and becoming more comfortable sexually, and to even ask for things, or even to have the idea and to accept the idea in yourself about something that you'd like to try in the bedroom. Or wherever you're having sex.
Exactly,
Mostly we're in the bedroom now.
Right. It's a bit of a lockdown.
Or at least indoors,
Because I think you know, even with the performance anxiety, a lot of the problems I say we experience mentally is around expectation and our perceived expectation of what sex is meant to be like. And I think I say sex is a wider thing, because it's not just a case of, you know, I think often when we say sex, people just think of penetration. And I think more and more, I think it's very important for men and women, and I will speak to men more strongly about this, is like sex is more than just penetration. And when you are able to start seeing it as that, there are the expectations that you might have start to fall away. You know, like for a man, like the first expectation is penis size, you know, like it's one of those things that I've found to be very odd, I think, over the years. Like, and maybe because as a black man sitting here, like I remember being very young and playing cricket at like 13 years old and having the very much older men commenting on about their idea of what my penis size would be.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it's like something you know, I've gone through life, and it's like men are very obsessed with penis size. And what they don't realize is it's not like they have this idea, it's like the bigger my penis, the more women will want me. And it's really not true. I remember there was a guy I went to the gym with, and he was a very big guy, tall guy, and he was a big guy all round. And I remember we were in the gym locker room talking once, and everyone was getting changed, and one of the guys was like, "Oh, you know, but you're right, you're massive." And he kind of looked over and said, he's like, "You know, you think that's really great, don't you? But have you ever considered how many women have said to me they will not have sex with me because of the size of my penis?"
So interesting. But you're right, like there is such like a cultural thing of obsession with the size of the penis.
And it's not all about, you know, when it comes to expectation around sex, it's like that isn't necessarily the kind of most important thing actually at all.
No, but you're right, like that feeds into performance anxiety massively, and it kind of comes down to kind kind of physical appearance as well. I think that affects, you know, how people, you know, especially with social media perpetuating what, you know, potentially is idealistic of bodies, men's bodies, women's bodies, everything. So people then think, actually, I don't look like whoever it is or what I should look like, and then when you're having sex and clothes are coming off or whatever, you then think, actually, I'm really worrying now about what the other person's going to think of me, rather than enjoying the moment and being together and yeah, being intimate.
I think what jumps out to me, David, is when you were talking about the penetration, is like, actually, yeah, I think the main type of performance anxiety that I've experienced is always about longevity. It's like how long, and not just how long, but how hard as well. Not how long, but how long, how hard. And it's almost like you're in a gym trying to do some HIIT workout, and I smash this routine out. But that especially in my younger years, like that was definitely there for me. And I actually, no, I still say to this day, right? There's times when it's like, oh, you know, I don't want to come too quickly, and then using breathing techniques and whatever, and having that as an issue. But I think it bothers me less now. But at least before, it was definitely a case. It was like, you know, what does this mean about me? What does that mean about me as a man compared to other men? Like, you know, and there's always in comparison. Like, how do I compare to other men, and what does it mean about me? So yeah, this is deep.
Yeah. Like no, you're right though, and I think there is that thing about comparing, and like you innately, like as humans, you do, and you can't, like we can't help it, but it's not helpful.
No, and I think, like for men, it's this comparison again. There's a couple of comparisons I think you can do. It's like either compare if you're with a woman and you know she's been sexually active and she's open about that, you suddenly start comparing yourself to her past experiences, and you're like, oh my God, will I be as good as her last lover? Will I be able to last as long? Will I be as big? Will my body be as good? And then, you know, it's those sorts of things build up and it creates a stress. But there's also comparing yourself to your past self or a past performance that you have as well. And, you know, like I remember for years I used to be like avid going to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, and like moving into more life now where I don't really do that, is comparing my body to the way my body used to be. And I even hear it in my language sometimes. I will speak to my partner and be like, oh, you should have seen me 5 years ago. You know, I know that's from my experience, is something that really can create.
And it's almost like putting yourself down in the current state, which is really like, it's not great, but we do it to ourselves. I think it's, you know, quite normal, but it's not, it doesn't help, and actually it's not particularly attractive for other people either, because they're obviously like, I'm really attracted to you right now, like, and now you're saying that you're bet, like, it's just it's interesting psychological thing that we do when we put ourselves down like that.
I had a yoga teacher who was showing me some different poses, and I made mention, because I had a really bad sciatica at one point in my life, and so I made mention of my right leg being a lot thinner than it used to be and whatnot, and she just kind of chuckled to herself, and I was like, what's funny? And she was like, it's funny how people always seem to compare themselves to their past self. It's like it's a thing, like it's as if it's a thing to compare yourself to, is that, oh, I should have maintained this same stature, this same size and everything, as opposed to just being present in the moment to where you are now, and this is me today. So I could really relate, Dave, to that idea, because actually I think it's actually a huge one. It's a big thing that people are always comparing themselves to the younger self, and then missing out on actually being present to what's actually real right now. And I like what you just said there about, you know, someone, or, you know, a woman or a man is attracted to who you are right now. And then we're lost in our minds about but you should have seen how wonderful it was back then.
No, and I, like lots of my friends do it, you know, and say things, you know, I wish I looked like I did back then, or whatever it is, and it's really frustrating, because you know that, like, it's just it's like a negative thought cycle, and like you say, people like them for who they are now, and it's I see it time and time again. And then even then it'll be like, you know, I like myself 2 years ago, and then in 2 years time I wish I was what I was 2 years ago now. Like, and at that point they weren't happy with how things were. So it's,
yeah. There was a song, I forget the lyrics or whatever, but I think the title was like "Always Wear Sunscreen," and there was a piece in that where he basically said like, just value who you are now, because you'll never be this. You'll never like be this again, and then you'll look back at pictures and be like, "Oh man, actually, I was actually pretty good." And and this experience actually happened to me, where I looked at pictures of myself at school, and I used to have like massive self-doubt and about my appearance and about fitting in and looking like other people. I had like I still got mad curly hair, and everyone had curtains in school, and I was like trying to straighten my hair or gel it down, whatever, to fit in. But it's true. It's like you look back and you think, actually, like, damn, like that's I was actually cool back then, but I didn't enjoy it, and I better actually acknowledge that now, because I don't want to keep living. And the word you used there was that negative cycle, because that just keeps happening if you don't check that. Like, every day of your life, you're just like, oh, it was better back then.
So true.
It's so easy to be in the comparison of past self. Like, I feel like it's almost like we're conditioned into it from such a young age to be comparing ourselves. Like, even in this time, it's really easy to look and go, oh, what's everyone else doing? I'm not doing enough. I'm not being enough. And I think, this really sits in with the performance. It's like, it's about enoughness, isn't it? It's like, I'm not good enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not lasting long enough. I'm not big enough. I'm not strong enough. Or, for women and men as well, is like, I'm not good looking enough. I'm not. And I think also, for the one that kind of popped into my mind for men, that happens, and I know it happens with women a lot as well, is like, I'm not making them climax fast enough.
Yeah. It's definitely prevalent in women as well. And you then doubt yourself. You think, so I did a lot of a bit in kind of sexual health clinics with psychosexual counselling, and actually people, they think that they're unattractive, or they're not, attractive to someone else if, they don't climax soon enough, or they, for women, like using lubrication, like artificial lube, they're like, oh, I should, I'm not aroused enough by this person, but actually it's not that at all. Like, there's so many other things that can affect that, but there's this misconception, and then people start to worry that, and they get this cycle of worrying again.
And it just makes the problem that's there even worse. Like, I think I read somewhere, or maybe my partner was telling me, she said that arousal and, I don't know what to call it, self-lubrication, they're not actually, they're not linked in any way.
So there's a thing called arousal non-concordance, which is basically, not your body not doing what your mind is. If you're aroused, then it's not creating the natural lubrication that you expect. I mean, arousal is associated with vaginal lubrication, but at the same time, there are so many things that affect it. So time of the month, our menstrual cycle, if we're stressed, if there's other medication we're taking, or if there's other external factors, they can affect it. That therefore, even if you are very aroused, it doesn't equal how wet you are effectively.
No, I'm really glad we have a doctor here to correct us when we're wrong.
I was actually intrigued as to, like, because we said some of the stuff that like men really concern themselves with when it comes to performance anxiety and sexual performance. Like, what are the main things that women what comes to their mind when they experience performance anxiety?
So in terms of kind of the worries, I think very similar in terms of body image, how they look, even kind of like genitalia. So the vulva, which is kind of, the external opening of the vagina, that a lot of girls use, like young women would come into clinic saying, I want something called labiaplasty, which is basically plastic surgery on the labia, which are the lips of the opening of the vagina, because they don't like how it looks. And actually that's crazy, because they're young, fit and healthy women with absolutely fine labia, but we kind of taught, or we see all these things in popular culture and porn that they should look a certain way, and so they worry about that even, and the size of the breasts and their physique and all of that stuff. So definitely in terms of how they look is a big one, I think, for women. and making sure that, you know, they're pleasuring their partner. That's a huge thing, I think. You know, a lot of the time that's put before their own pleasure, for sure. So it's, that, I think, very similar factors to men, but just from a female viewpoint.
There's one that I've come across, and I know, David, we've discussed this, and so it's like I think you've experienced this as well. Is like for men who are trying to withhold from ejaculating, it's interesting to see the response from women, and when because they're like, I've been in a situation where the woman wants me to ejaculate, and it's almost like there's something missing from the experience if I don't, and it's almost upsetting if I don't ejaculate. So I found that really curious at first. I was just like, I was trying to do something good for me, like I thought it was a good thing for me, and actually it turned out to be something as a frustration, or it almost seemed quite automatic, like it's like it had to happen. If it didn't happen, then there was something wrong.
It was like a massive expectation, and it was crazy, but it's like, it's just what people presume is going to happen. Like this routine.
I've experienced, it's something I've been kind of doing, I wouldn't say on and off, but it's something I've done for the last kind of year and a half, is just holding back ejaculation. And it's something that some women are just not happy about. You know, even I can remember one past lover, she said to me, you know, she was like, you know, I really enjoy the sex, it's really good, like I love everything about it, but I don't like it that you don't come. I just feel like something's incomplete. I feel like I've, you know, and she was very honest. She said, you know, I feel like I've not done something that I should do. And I was like, it's interesting. And we actually talked about it. And I said, you know, do you see that this is just conditioning? You have been socialized into believing that for sex to be good for me, that I have to come. And that's not the case. I'm telling you that I really enjoy it. But it is interesting to see, you know, it's kind of around expectations, isn't it? It is an expectation. It's like we're so trained and taught, and it's not things we choose, it's just kind of bombarded into us that this is what happens in sex. And it's what's sad is those influences don't come from necessarily healthy places.
No, it absolutely. And I think I completely agree with you, and actually, you know, it comes down to communication as well, but also saying, do you know what, sex doesn't need to be about this whole, you know, penis in vagina, you both climax, that's like amazing, whatever, great. I mean, if that's what happens and that's what you want, then brilliant. But at the same time, sex is more than just that for a lot of people a lot of the time. And actually, it might be that one of you isn't up for the kind of full-blown sex, but you can still be intimate and have that kind of closeness and the endorphins and the hormones without necessarily, you know, climaxing all the time, even though there's a huge taboo around that. And I think, you know, it's about being open with the person you're with and both communicating and saying, actually, like, I'm done here, or I'm happy, like we don't need to continue, even though they're then persevering with something that perhaps doesn't need to be. And that happens a lot.
I think, like, you know, I see we're getting into kind of how to overcome the performance anxiety here. Like, I think a big part of the conversation also is not centering everything around the penetration, and actually open up the conversation around foreplay. I think, you know, men get a very bad rap around foreplay traditionally, and I would love to do some work to change that, because I think it's somewhat unfair to a degree. But actually, you know, when we start to see sex as more than just penetration, the 5 minutes or the 30 seconds or the hour, whatever it is, you open up this whole remit of intimacy and kind of beautiful, intimate interaction that is actually almost more pleasurable than the penetration itself.
Definitely,
you know, and we're talking like, you know, that could be kissing, massage, it's even eating. You know, I feel that there can be an intimate nature in what you eat, how you eat, where you eat it, and just opening up what we see sex as, because then it puts so much, the pressure from the penetration starts to kind of dissipate, because it's not that huge kind of pinnacle of like, oh my God, I must last for 2 hours and I must be erect for the whole time.
Exactly. Unrealistic kind of expectations. No, and I completely agree. I think that's it. It's not putting this pressure on this end focus, like this end goal, which actually ultimately, you know, a lot of pleasure is built from other things, not just that, you know, climax. ending, if you like. So I think kind of by taking away that pressure, it allows you to enjoy and then see where things go.
Yeah, well, I like in my personal sexual education, which was very independent. In my, I wasn't formally schooled. Like what? Because I like, for me, like when I look back at my dating and relationships, I think the biggest thing that stands out for me is this whole concept of authenticity, which is obviously in the title of the podcast. And what we say is vulnerability is a key to authenticity. And I was thinking about this, and I was just, what really came to me as well is in sex is like the ability to be vulnerable. So there's the spoken word, and like what you were saying, being able to actually talk about what it is and why you're doing it and what's important to you, or when you've had enough and how you're feeling.
Yeah.
But then there's also the vulnerability of touch, the vulnerability of, going, like moving in the way that you feel best to move, is like, and to express yourself. And I find for me that without, like, I've not sat down to write this down or anything as a strategy or whatever, but I find that's what moves me. That's what keeps me in the sort of calmness of it, is actually by sharing, by being open and sharing how I feel, what it is I want. And it's not always easy. It's actually, it's nerve-wracking. It's like that moment in a love story where, where people are like, oh, what, and then the tension breaks, right?
Yeah.
But that, so I find that has been like being in touch with how you, like, really getting in touch with how you feel and taking the time to understand like what's true for you.
Exactly.
And actually being okay when it's not clear either, like not rushing that either, but allowing yourself. And I think I shared this earlier, but the idea of the unfolding, that's why I see that as so important, is because whereas, so I grew up in a strict Muslim background, and so sex was a massive no-no. So I've really started from, like, the pinnacle of zero to venture off into the woods and see to see what's happening, and so I really do feel that. I really feel like, it was like one way, and then I've gone and explored and ventured, and like Dave has been like a Sherpa for me in all these years with his experience. Yeah. Well, if it wasn't for Dave, I probably never would have gone to was it Torture Gardens? Was it like which is a fantastic place, and you really, like, for me, like, really seeing people in the ease of that environment. And so I find like sex is almost a language, like like being able to express yourself freely. It really eases that tension of performance, because you're talking, and that can also be part of the foreplay. And foreplay is so essential. Like, so I think that's a definite one for easing performance anxiety, is foreplay. But so is communication and knowing yourself as well. Yeah, that's just
100%. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think it's being in touch with your body and whoever's body you're with, and kind of being honest with that, and kind of owning that journey, whatever it, wherever you may be on that journey, with either with that person or with yourself, and kind of being present, which I think touch helps with, and kind of obviously touch communication, but also verbal communication. And and I like what you said about being vulnerable, because that you have to be vulnerable to kind of allow this to happen, and then to kind of, it helps.
Yeah, I think, as you say that, I think for a lot of men, like I speaking as a man and experiencing basically my life as a man, like, I think that's the shift, right? Like, we go from such a performance-based side of sex to actually having sex be an interaction, be a two-person thing, as opposed to like, right, I'm here, I am going to deliver. I am going to deliver the goods. like the Amazon man. I'm here to deliver. To an actual interaction and getting to know and comfort and everything we've discussed. Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting point. I'm having these realizations now.
And I think it's interesting what you say about shifting from being the deliverer, the kind of
Deliveroo.
Delivery. All these delivery services. Other delivery services are also available. But like in moving from it being like something I do to something you do to someone, to something that you co-create and do together. And I think that it's really interesting. I also see it as a shift from the kind of toxic masculine view of sex. It's like that when you're delivering, it's like there's an entitlement that you're entitled to the person that you're with. And I'll assume from this side, it's like toxic masculinity. It's like, I'm entitled to this woman's body. And then when you shift out of that into this, the more of a mindset of like, oh, this is something we co-create, your touch, your sensations, your feeling become a kind of two-way language. And I know for some men listening to this, you'll be like, what the fuck are they talking about? But if you start to drop into more of your feeling of like what you're feeling, the touch, the feeling of the sensations and the touch, instead of thinking about where you need this to go or how this thing you're doing now is going to get you to the next place, the level of enjoyment for both you and the woman you're with will just explode. Like that's just been my real personal experience. And it also causes you to slow down. It gets you out of your head, out of the kind of worries and the performance anxiety. And you can just enjoy what's happening instead of it being another mission to complete.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's not like a tick box exercise. It's something that you're experiencing together and enjoying together, for sure.
Yeah. Like I'd say maybe I think it's for younger men, or I'm going to say younger men, more for men who are, I didn't want to say immature, but that was the word I was thinking of. But men who see
less
like
experience.
having sex as like a conquest. Because when you see it as a conquest, it's like, oh, I need to get more. I need to pile them up like they're Pokemon cards or my sneaker collection. When actually it's more of a co-creation. There's a beauty in that. And I know it's difficult if you struggle with being in your feelings. And if that's something you struggle with as a man, listen to some of our other episodes. There's plenty of them about that. But, when you start to feel into yourself and feel into the woman you're with, a lot of the anxiety you have will disappear. And I think the point actually I wanted to ask Ahmad is, and to you, Sarah, as well, how do you feel, what was your advice to men and women who they want to talk about their performance anxieties with their partner or someone they're casually with?
I think for a bit of advice from me would be to kind of maybe not bring it up in the moment. I think it's something to kind of bring up. You have to bring it up sensitively. It can be quite tough discussion to have, and you don't want your partner to take it in the wrong way. But I think it's important to just say, look, let's sit down and talk about this in a kind of just in a adult way, and say, look, it's a two-way thing, and where like how do you see things, and this is how I see things, and almost do like a bit of an MOT of the relationship and how you are sexually and what you like and what you don't like. And actually there is, make sure you both talk, and it's not just a kind of a one-way thing. Say, you have your say, I'll have my say. How can we make this better for both of us and enjoy this in a way that's great for both of us? So again, I guess it comes down to communication, and it's different for everyone in every relationship. So you just have to be sensitive about that.
Yeah, actually, I've actually experienced that. My fiance has actually sat me down and had words with me about it, and actually I do appreciate it. I do appreciate the conversation, because then we're able to discuss things, and it is a discussion. It's not her telling me off. It's a discussion, and so I like that massively resonates with it seems if you've never done it before, I guess it seems like it's a bit weird to be talking about it outside, but it's totally not, like, especially in a relationship, to just openly discuss again what your wants and desires are, but also your worries and concerns, like if there's anything cropping up. And I think I think that's an important part of any co-creation, right, is to actually sharing, all right, what's the good and the bad, like what is what, and it's very normal.
Nice. I think there's no education around sexual communication. I think that's the big missing part in sexual education in schools, or when I remember I was at school. I hope I pray that it's much better than it was when we were at school. There's no kind of explanation of how to communicate, and it's simple as like, I feel, like this, I like this, and it's like owning that, because I think like you both said, talking about it beforehand or after, depending on the relationship you're involved in, is so important. And I've seen, and something that I've advised guys that I've coached is like, if it's a good time afterwards to talk. Actually, after sex is a really good time to talk and be like, I really enjoyed when you did this. I really love doing this to you. And it's always own what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is I think is a really good way. But it's also a good time to go, I feel nervous, when you look at me, if you look at my body, I'm scared about this, or I'm worried that, you're not enjoying it enough. Because in those moments, it's like you're owning what you're saying, and you're giving the other person the space to kind of speak into that as well.
Yeah, and I guess it's a moment when you're very connected, and like you say, kind of not saying you didn't do this or you did that in that way that I didn't like, just kind of saying, this is how I felt by it, and this is how, when you do this is the emotions that come up with me. It's a much easier discussion to have, and
yeah, I think that's a great one. Wow, that's a lot there. There's one actually is what I'm looking at my small notes I have here. I think just speaking into one of the things about, as we said, that one of the biggest things for men around sexual performance was about lasting long enough. And obviously we know about the wonderful little blue pills that are widely available, which I really don't recommend to men. But what we don't often talk about is kind of natural ways in which we can learn to kind of prolong our intercourse, for instance, like something as simple as revolutionary as I said to someone not too long ago, was like, when you start feeling like you're about to come, you could just stop and say, hey, I just want to stop for a second. There's nothing wrong. It's just, I'm getting a bit close and I would like to stop. And I think much of the male population don't even realize that's an option for them, within having sex, or even, and the other option obviously is just slowing down, slowing down and stopping. As well as, like AJ, you mentioned earlier, some breathing techniques, like deep breathing, as a way to get the blood circulation going.
I'm glad you mentioned the slowing down, because I actually, when you mentioned it earlier, and I think it's such a key factor, not just in terms of penetration, but the whole, the whole show, like the whole thing from end to end. And it's definitely something that I learned, later on in life, and it really helps to actually be present to the other person and actually create a really nice interaction, because otherwise I find like people's energies can be in different places. Some people can be really hungry, they're really lustful for the sex, and it can be both men or women, right? Like, who are like that. And I find like, and that in itself can create a performance. I've actually had this myself, actually, where I was with a girl who, she was really hungry, and I let that run, and then I actually came really quickly, like super fast, and which I was just like, okay, like at that point I was like, well, that happens. But then actually I think I was talking to you about it afterwards, David, and then you mentioned to me, and I was like, yes, so true. Like I didn't consciously just think to myself, I'm just gonna slow this down. Like I get where she's at, but I'm just gonna just hold it back a bit, and almost not take control, but essentially guide the session, and just what's the word I'm looking for? Well, I suppose just slow it down. Basically, I was trying to find a better word for slow it down, but just slow it down. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think you're right. And you wouldn't, in other aspects of your life, you wouldn't think, it's ways of managing it that you would do in any other aspect of things that perhaps you're feeling a bit anxious about, or whatever it is. You'd just slow down or breathe a bit deeper, or kind of, take yourself out of the situation for a minute.
That is actually true. That's actually a really key piece of advice in life nowadays. Like I find for myself, if I'm getting a bit too like I don't like unfocused and I don't know what's happening, whatever, I'm just like, I just need to slow down. I'm trying to get things done too quickly or whatever. I just need to breathe, and otherwise I'm just not going to get anything done.
Exactly.
So true.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, slowing down is, I think it's a great thing for all aspects of life. Like I find myself anxious of not doing. I'm like, oh, I'm not doing enough, and I have to stop and go, oh, wait a minute, you need to just go for a walk, you know, walk in the park or whatever it is. But no, I find performance anxiety on both sides interesting, and one of the things that is, I think, that men aren't always aware of is a woman's anxiety, and they're not particularly aware of how they can help. You know, there's a way in which, as a man, I think you can do your utmost to make a woman feel safe and comfortable with you. Yeah. You know, that be kind of in your language, you know, not being judgmental or coming across as being judgmental. I think because that's what I think, you know, when we look at a lot of this, a huge amount of it is we don't want to be judged by someone else.
Yeah.
So like, as a man, if you're always, you know, you're on a date with someone and you're judging everyone around and how they look and, you know, their appearance and so forth, you're giving off this signal instantly that you're a judgmental person.
Yeah.
And for a man and for a woman, it's going to feel like, oh, so if you do see me naked, you're going to compare me, you're going to judge me. It's like, no, be in that space of being non-judgmental and accepting of the people around you.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And I mean, a compliment always goes a long way as well.
Yeah.
You know, for I'm sure for guys as well, but for kind of, you know, if you're a bit anxious or feeling a bit, you know, you want to feel a bit more comfortable, then compliments always help.
That's true. Yeah. That's a very simple way just to relax the feeling for both people, you know. It's just like, you know, you look beautiful. You look wonderful naked. You know, because that's the concern that's there, isn't it? Like, oh God, what are they thinking of me when I'm naked?
Yeah.
And then you just, you know,
I think it's almost like a staple or a fundamental here, because I think one of the things that gets overlooked, and this isn't just, you know, men or women or whatever, this is everyone. We always have worries and doubts and concerns, and so you can pretty much just go, right, this person's going to have some worries, doubts, and concerns. Let me alleviate that with, you know, by just letting them know that everything's cool, it's fine. And like, so even if you don't recognize, like overtly recognize that someone's nervous or embarrassed or whatever, is that you can guarantee that they pretty much are. Like in the last few, you know, before the lockdown, and David and I were doing a lot more events. It just occurred to me one day, I was out at the front of before we started, and I was feeling nervous, and it occurred to me that so was everyone else. Like, so was everyone in the audience feeling nervous.
Yeah.
And it just and since that day, it was just like something that I was then later at a dating event, and I was tasked with like getting the whole room ready, which was an interesting task to do. And so actually that's something I pointed out to everyone there, was that, you know what, like, hands up who's nervous. And of course no one put their hand up, so I had to ask again. So I was like, hand up, like, and then like, don't lie about it. And then so everyone put their hand up, and I just said to everyone, look around, like, everyone is nervous here. Like, everyone is nervous, so acknowledge that in yourself and in other people, and then it actually allows you to relax.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not alone here. Like, everyone's in the same boat. So I think that's a really interesting point that, David, like, you know, the compliment thing is like, you can pretty much go, right, this is it's almost like not that there was a checklist for this, but that you can definitely, if there was a checklist, that would definitely be on there. Slow down, compliment.
Yeah, exactly. Simple.
Yeah. Slow down, compliments. It's amazing that we don't even necessarily think about it, but it's like, even, and then with the compliment, it's like there is so much beauty in all people, you know, and you can see and I think, you know, you don't want the compliment to feel like, oh, I'm just saying, oh, you look beautiful tonight, because it becomes I don't know if anyone's seen Too Hot to Handle recently. Has anyone watched any episodes of it?
Yeah.
So one of the guys, Bryce, do you remember a few episodes in, the American guy that comes in?
Yes.
And I was and I was watching that. With my partner, and it was funny. We were watching, and he was talking to, I think the girl's name's Chloe, and she was like talking, and he would just go, "Oh man, you're so beautiful. Like, you know, a woman like you, where I live, men would be running after." And I was sitting there, and I was saying to my partner, I was like, she doesn't realize that he says this shit to every single woman.
Yeah. Or she might.
Yeah. I was like, but actually he could have been, there was no will from him to be like, where is the beauty in her?
Yeah, there was nothing unique or,
And there's always that, you know, if there is a compliment, you're gonna, you know, you're with a woman and you are getting into the more intimate times with them. with her, it's like you can generate a compliment is really unique to her and your experience of her. It doesn't have to feel like it's a canned thing that you're saying.
And I think you can tell as well when someone's being sincere or just saying something. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good. I don't think I have any other points.
No, I think that was really good.
We've covered a lot of things there.
Yeah, no, that was really lovely. Thanks, guys. Really great to talk. Got some interesting points.
Yeah. So before we head off, where can our listeners find out more about yourself, Hanx, and what you guys are up to in the future?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so Hanx, Hanx. So we're on kind of social media, Hanx Official, Instagram, Twitter's Hanx_official, Facebook. Where else are we? Pinterest, and then hanxofficial.com or hanx.co.uk is our website. So you can access our forum there. And in fact, there was a thread recently about it was a woman saying, I've got a higher sex drive than my, I know that's more libido than performance, but she's saying I've got a higher sex drive than my male partner and feeling a bit funny about that. And so there's guys on there as well, mainly women, but there's men that talk on there as well. So yeah, hanxofficial.com.
Wonderful. I did have a look actually at the forum at some of the questions. I was like, oh, I could answer some of these, and then I got distracted by some other thing. I think as is the way.
Always.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you. So it was a pleasure. It was a wonderful conversation. It feels like the first time we spoke on the phone, or that while ago, a time we just spoke about things for endlessly, if I remember right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Could keep going.
Wow. Great. So I think that's actually, I guess for our listeners, if you want to find us on Instagram, we'll be at Authentic Dating Series, or if you want to come and send us a message through the website or read any of our blog articles, it's www.authenticdatingseries.com. And I guess if you're looking for coaching around your dating or sex, there's also, you can come to us. We have a wonderful 3-month program that we've been running to great success actually with one of our current clients who's going to be rolling off. So we're going to have a spot open on that. So please get in contact through email, hello@authenticdatingseries.com.
That's it. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks, guys. We'll hopefully catch up in real life at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure. That'd be great.